of us experience loss. We are told with hardship, there is new life. It's not the end of the story, it's the beginning of another story.
The loss of my father, the greatest love of my life, sent me reeling. I'm trying to find solace in my faith, but how can I make peace with such heartbreak? My Muslim friends gave me an idea. They sent me on a quest, searching Islam's stories of love for answers to questions we all ask, which unraveled the secrets of the Taj Mahal, illuminated a little-known story about Malcolm X, and demonstrated how love can change the world.
Love, it's not just an emotion, it's a force.
I've met religious leaders, historians, and artists who shared their knowledge and offered insights into these stories, who might help me reconcile the joy of love for my father and the terrible pain of his loss. What can we learn from Islam's greatest stories of love?
Every heart breaks, and your heart must break. But what a difference there is between a heart that merely breaks and a heart that breaks open.
What does that mean for a heart to break open? My father spent his 20s surfing in Brazil, where I'm from. Marriage and children were not part of his plans. Then one night, he had this vivid dream about a little girl with a massive curly hair. When he woke up, he knew that someday he would have a daughter. He always said that I was part of his destiny. We were very close my entire childhood. When I was 11, he took me on a trip to Europe. He booked a sleeper car. I had the top bunk. It was fun eating in the dining car. And at our stops, he would act out stories about what we were seeing. It was one of the best weeks of my life. When our family went through some difficult times, he was my best friend, the person I counted on for everything. He supported my decision to leave Brazil and study in the US. After I became a Muslim, many of my friends and even some family turned their backs on me, but he stood by me. Always my rock. He was the best father. When he was diagnosed with cancer, I wanted to leave school and be with him. But he kept reassuring me that he was doing well, getting better, and we even made plans for another big trip, just like the one we took when I was young. I never knew how sick he really was. I was 5,000 miles away when he died. I didn't even get the chance to say goodbye. When the person you love is gone, could be because of a breakup, a long absence, or death, it leaves you feeling adrift and alone. For a long time now, I've felt lost. And worst of all, my faith has been shaken. So I've been going to a weekly gathering with Muslim friends for prayer and reflection at Harvard Divinity School, where I'm a student. I've always found prayer very healing in all the 3 different ways that I've prayed. I was born Catholic. When I was 12, my mother converted to Judaism, and then from then onwards, I was raised in the Jewish tradition. Later, as an adult, I learned about Islam. I love its emphasis on social justice. I like the rituals, the fasts, the pilgrimages, the way the daily prayer engages the whole body. And I appreciate that Islam expresses itself not as a rejection, but as a continuation of the monotheistic tradition of Judaism and Christianity. Being a Muslim just feels like a natural step in my spiritual journey.
So I'm gonna start.
I also cherish the sense of community I feel with this group. They were there for me when I really needed the help.
When I found out about my dad, I remember texting Anijan, and he just answered, "We're coming." And I didn't know what we meant, and I certainly didn't know that we meant 30 people who all came, who dropped everything just to sit in my tiny living room, who could not fit everyone, praying with me while I figure out my tickets to go plan my father's funeral, while I cried.
As I talked again about receiving that terrible news, they saw that even months later, I was still struggling. And when I shared that hardly a day had passed that I didn't break down crying, they sent me on a quest. There are stories from the Islamic tradition of other people who have loved and lost. They said I might find what I need by exploring some of them. Of course, they would suggest doing research. After all, we're a bunch of graduate students. So for the last several months, I've been searching some of these stories for the answers to the questions we all ask. What is love? Why does it end? How can we make love endure? What can we learn from Islam's greatest stories of love? The first love story I explored was a tale about two teenagers, a girl named Layla and a boy called Majnun. It's a very old story, originally from Arabia. It was part of the oral tradition of Arabic poetry, retold around campfires long before Islam. But though its origins aren't Islamic, it has inspired centuries of Muslim poets, artists, writers, and philosophers to look to it to explore the meaning of love. So I decided to start there. The story still excites imaginations all over the world, from Morocco to India, Turkey to Azerbaijan. There are films, annual festivals, and live performances celebrating it. But I discovered that I could find it much closer to home. In 2016, the renowned dance choreographer Mark Morris collaborated with Yo-Yo Ma and the Silk Road Ensemble for a dance presentation of this story.
The stories are very well known. You can pick up any of these books, and they're thrilling and beautiful. They're Bollywood movies that are on this story, and I found online, of course, full productions of this piece. The production is so interesting and so strange. So I thought, well, this is really kind of fabulous. So I agreed to take on this piece, and really, it turned out to me to be sort of miraculous in the way that this show worked. You know, people just sort of glibly call it the Romeo and Juliet of Islam or something like that, which it's not. I've done Romeo and Juliet, and it's not the same story. It's very, very specifically simple.
Harvard University's art museums are a short walk from the Divinity School. Their many exhibits feature art from all over the world, including paintings that illustrate the story of Layla and Majnun. There I spoke with Dr. Ayşen Yıldırım, the museum's curator of Islamic and later Indian art. The Layla and Majnun paintings she showed me, some of them hundreds of years old, tell a heartbreaking story. It begins as many young romances do, in school.
Majnun was very handsome. And then Layla, who is one of the most beautiful girls in her tribe, was also brought to school. Here we have one of the moments that artists illustrate a lot. When they first meet at school, as soon as they see each other, they fall in love, but they can't almost say anything. They are so kind of taken by each other. Both of them are trying to go to school every day with excitement. The other students realize that something is different because Majnun, who was a very good student, all of a sudden starts not paying attention to anything else but just Layla.
What I love about Ayşen is that I find it very relatable. I find the story of school love and not being able to pay attention to your schoolwork because you're in love, like exactly at that point when you start finding out what love is.
He goes out to the bazaar and starts chanting Layla's name. Unfortunately, Majnun's constantly going out like this, and especially telling these poems about Layla in the bazaars. This is considered quite shameful and angers Layla's father. So this is basically what starts the whole kind of separation. He removes Layla from school and puts her in her tent. She can't leave.
Their love is forbidden, they're separated physically, and they're dying of heartbreak before your eyes.
They're kind of
Dr. Yıldırım explained that the kind of artwork used in these manuscripts is often referred to as miniature painting. Not many painters still practice this art form today, but I met one artist who wants to keep the tradition alive.
So, I mean, what was it about miniature art that made you want to pursue it?
When I saw them for the first time up so close, I was just mesmerized by the aesthetics and the beauty, you know, like the intricate mark making, the narrative, the colors. You know, they just like hold a big world within a small little space. It was just pure, sheer love at first sight kind of thing. There was one painting I remember where Majnu in the desert is met up by a caravan, and it shows that the people in the caravan are kind of more from like elite class, and that is the caravan that Layla's family and where she's in. The name Majnu, which refers to madness, when you're madly in love with someone. That kind of a love where you have lost that consciousness of, you know, how you look to the world. You're only thinking about the love.
Layla also feels exactly the same, but this is the kind of discrepancy between the two lovers. While Majnun almost cannot stop from telling poetry about or words about Layla, Layla, on the other hand, cannot say anything. Wow. So she leaves everything inside.
Majnun's poetry for Layla trembles with such yearning, such aching descriptions of her beauty and grace that men from far and wide fall in love with her too. They travel to her father pleading for her hand. A rich man named Ibn Salam finally wins him over with his lavish gifts. Layla's father forces her to marry this stranger and declares that the story of Layla and Majnun is over. It is not.
At night, when Ibn Salam wants to take her as his wife, Layla says, stay at arm's length. I'm not going to let you. I'm devoted only to Majnun. Wow. Kill me if you like, but I'm not yours.
They're in love and they're forced not to be together. How horrible is that? And she's alone in her tower with some husband that she was, given to. They know the other one is there somewhere trying to get in contact, and it doesn't really happen.
Majnun is really unhappy. He says, that's it. And he starts living, in the desert. And then one day he sees a wounded gazelle, and there's a hunter who is actually ready to kill the animal. But Majnun says, please don't kill him. And the hunter says, well, what do you offer? And Majnun gives all his clothes. And he saves the gazelle.
In the bright sunlight, I saw a gazelle grazing in the meadow. I thought for a moment that it was Layla. I dream of us.
Two gazelles grazing in a faraway land. My life, your life, finally together.
And he moves in a cave with animals in the desert, and he's writing poems or songs or whatever.
Layla hears these poems through others who come and tell her. And she also kind of writes poetry as well. And her words are taken by others to Majnun.
So it's all pining away and never really being in any way satisfied or gratified. So they won't love anyone else because they needn't.
Layla's husband dies. Everybody thinks she is mourning for her husband, whereas Layla is actually mourning for Majnun. Because of this grief, she realizes that she's not going to live very long. She tells her mother, I would like to be buried like a bride, because after this, in the other life, I will meet with Majnun. And yes, Layla dies, and Majnun comes to her grave, and he stays there for a long time. And Majnun kind of disappears into dust. His tribesmen come and collect the bones and make another grave next to Layla, so the two lovers join in the afterlife.
The greatest love of my life has been my father, and when I lost him a year ago, everything kind of stopped making sense. I'm really trying to understand this whole story. Like, I don't know what we learn about love through this very tragic, sad story of two lovers that never meet.
Just talking to you, about these stories really makes me kind of come to this conclusion about love. All love stories have pain. Maybe the yearning for each other is the purpose. Love connects our past with our future. You pick up these pieces and then you move forward and keep making your own story. This is about making your story.
Mount Auburn Cemetery is a short walk away from my campus. Dating back to the early 1800s, it's one of the most visited cemeteries in the US. The gravestones are a reminder of loves and cherished relationships that once were. Husbands and wives, parents and children. Many of these markers have been standing here for more than 100 years. Which made me think of something else Amreen said.
It's not the love. The love, it's what the love makes you do. And then how you translate it, transform it into something else.
I came across a book about one such transformation. A transformation of love into something truly extraordinary. I traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet the author. Dr. Michael Calabria is an Arabic and Islamic studies scholar at the St. Bonaventure University in New York. I also discovered that he's a Franciscan friar. Almost from the moment it was finished, the Taj Mahal gave rise to many myths. According to Calabria's book, the true story of the world's most famous building is written all over it for everyone to see. Father Michael, I am so excited to finally get to meet you, and I have so many questions. Starting with, how did you come to write a book like this?
I was asked to develop a course on Islamic art and architecture. And I had spent a lot of time in the Middle East and was familiar with the art and architecture of that region, but I didn't know very much about Islamic culture in South Asia. And so I traveled for the first time to India in 2009 and, of course, went to the Taj Mahal. When I arrived for the first time and stood before the Taj, it was a transcendent experience for me. It's perhaps the most spectacular work of architecture ever created by human hands. As a professor of Arabic, I was particularly aware of this beautiful calligraphy that is inscribed on various parts of the Taj complex, on the gateway to the Taj, on the mausoleum itself, both inside and out. For the first time, I understood that this wasn't simply a work of architecture. This was text. We are encouraged to read the Taj as a text, as a holy text, as a text of faith.
But a text for whom? The words are from the Holy Quran. So yes, they are for Muslims, though not just for Muslims. The Quran expresses its message in universal language, meant for the entire world. But Dr. Calabria thinks that the text is also there for the sake of a single shattered man, Shah Jahan, the fifth Muslim emperor of India. He said that to really understand this, you must know the love story between Shah Jahan and his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal. Dr. Supriya Gandhi of Yale University helped tell the story.
What do we actually know about the relationship between Shah Jahan and his wife, Mumtaz Mahal? It's certainly a famous love story that is attested in at least one historical chronicle.
They're quite young when they meet, 14, 15 years old, and according to the chronicles, they fall immediately in love. But they have to wait 5 years to get married.
And that's partly because, Mumtaz Mahal's kind of family was in a bit of political trouble at that time.
In the meantime, Shah Jahan enters into a political marriage. That's what he has to do as a prince and would-be emperor. But the chronicles are clear that Mumtaz is the love of